Finally, this one feels good. Admiral Raddus is coming to the game and is the topic of today's talk video. I've had my flag planted here a while. He's been in every quarterly speculation video since I started doing them 3 quarters ago. I'll add a button somewhere or maybe at the end of the video for the most recent quarterly speculation video, but we're due for the next one of those at the end of the month. And I'm glad when I do it, I'll have some wins to point to with Raddus here and with the Tuscan Omicron. So this is the topic, Raddus in general, profundity, breakdown and analysis of the kit, synergies, developer insights, and then we wrap up with the free-to-play gearing of my roster. Raddus is a big domino. The only reason they are adding Raddus is because the profundity is on its way. I don't know how or when, but this is laying the groundwork. You're going to want to get this guy fast. This was set in motion when Kyber fleet depth was increased. We were in dire need of more capital ships, and there's only so many possible options, and Raddus is one of the easiest ones for CG to implement. Then the Outrider happened and made the case even stronger. What I'm betting on is a split in the Rebel fleet, because the Outrider did a very interesting thing. It made Biston's Ewing obsolete, which is a move CG would never be interested in. They're looking to encourage spending, and Biston and Scarif Rebel Pathfinder are horrible to gear. They would not want to retire the utility of Biston's Ewing. They'd rather maintain the incentive to gear those characters. So instead, look for these splits to split. Biston will go to one, Outrider will go to the other, and I think it's possible we get an X-Wing squadron fleet and a Falcon fleet. Raddus adds another data point to what has been the recent theme in projects for CG, which is adding utility to underused characters and factions, and that is what we have with Raddus, and he ties into the monthly login character of Baze Melbus, who is clearly indicating that the Rogue One Squadron was going to get a look at. So breaking down this kit, basic ability, protective shot, kind of refreshing to have a pretty simple one here. Special damage to the target, grant weakest ally, protection up. Subtle mechanic to add a little bit of survivability. But there's also a lot of protection up going on with this kit in general. But we can move on from that ability, not too much to really parse there. I kind of wish it would say weakest ally without protection up, so it had some potential to spread the protection up, but that doesn't really matter. The first special, Inspiring Maneuver, cooldown of 6, has the Zeta. Rebel allies AoE gain protection up of 50%, recover 35%, max protection. All allied tanks are going to gain taunt, and all Rogue One allies are going to gain Spark of Rebellion and Mass Assist. If the target is Darkside and debuffed, then that will increase their cooldowns except for on the GLs, and if all allies are Rogue One, it's going to reduce the cooldown of the ability by 2. So you'll be able to use this ability again in 4 turns instead of the 6-turn cooldown. The Spark of Rebellion ability. This is a granted buff like Iden Verso's buff that she gives to the squad. Gain 40% offense and 30 speed. When the character attacked, they're going to recover 20% max health and protection. Empire enemies defeated by the character while the buff is active can't be revived. So that is the first of several components that are going to make Raddus a strong Iden counter, but there's more to come with that. And if Spark of Rebellion is dispelled, gain 40% turn meter, 5% upload progress, and protection up 50%. So the granted buff and some other recent buffs, they give you a choice where allowing the buff hurts you and dispelling the buff also hurts you. So you need to choose which scenario that you want. Either you are going to allow the buff and they're going to have a ton of speed and extra offense, or you dispel and you boost their turn meter, you give them some survivability, and you boost the upload progress. And upload, we'll talk about what that does with hope at the end of the kit with the uniques. So the timing of this ability is going to be a little interesting. It's going to depend if you have the Omicron or not, because the Omicron is going to allow the squad to start with this ability active. But you may consider using it anyway just because of the cooldown manipulation. So it's one of those things where I'm wondering, based on turn orders, how much I care about this Omicron, but we'll get to that in a little bit. The second special, Blue Squadron Air Support, cooldown of 3, cleanse all the debuffs on all light side allies, AoE special damage, and if Admiral Raddus is the leader, gain 5% upload progress, and if an enemy is defeated, gain an additional 8% upload. But I think with this ability, we're going to need to do a little bit of testing to figure out the when and how to best use it. Because the amount of damage done by this ability is going to have a big effect on its use. If it can reliably take out an enemy if they're low enough in health, then waiting to use it is going to have a big benefit. But maybe the cleanse aspect is going to be more important. However, if you think about the context of using it against Iden Verso, and Iden is going to be applying vulnerable, then there's a downside to using this ability too soon. And that we are going to touch on with the leadership ability, and another one of those pieces that make Raddus a good Iden counter, and why maybe we don't want to use this special too early. The Leadership Rebel Assault has a Grand Arena Omicron. Is that really the first ability in the game called Rebel Assault? That's kind of surprising. For each Rogue One ally, Rogue One allies will gain 10% health, 12% potency, 8 speed, 12 tenacity. So that is a nice big stat boost to the entire squad. When an Empire enemy gains bonus turn meter, they're going to be inflicted with daze. And that is really nice, because if you think about it, there's a couple scenarios in which bonus turn meter is going to become a thing. With Iden Verso, when you dispel her granted buff, that turns into bonus turn meter for an Iden Verso squad. Palpatine, with his lead, gives a bunch of bonus turn meter. So this is going to shut down both of those squads with that daze. Not shut down, but it's going to make them less effective by inflicting that daze. So if a Rogue One ally is critically hit, enemy is going to gain exposed. So as they are inflicting a debuff, it is going to end up having an impact which is going to hurt them with the granting of those exposed debuffs. With the Grand Arena Omicron, Rogue One allies gain 40% max protection. At the start of the battle, Rogue One allies are going to gain Spark of Rebellion, and when Spark of Rebellion is dispelled, they gain crit chance up, crit damage up, defense up, health up, offense up, potency up, protection up. So just a bunch of buffs. So, just teased this a second ago. The big thing to consider here is the aspect where they say if a Rogue One ally is critically hit. Because the thing to keep in mind here is Iden Verso inflicts vulnerable, which guarantees critical hits if they have the debuff. So that means Iden is definitely going to be critically hitting, which means that entire squad is going to have exposes inflicted on it on the very first turn, because if Iden is on defense, the first move is going to be that mass assist ability, which puts the granted buff on, and now they're all going to have expose, which means you don't need to worry about turn order too much when you're using the first special inspiring maneuver, because if you have Raddus going first or soon after first going second, you are going to have debuffs on everyone for him to be able to use this ability and have that cooldown manipulation. That is all going to add into the Iden countering capabilities. The other thing to consider here are Star Killer squads, and this was brought up by Tract on the Discord. There you have Vulnerable is inflicted by Star Killer, and it's inflicted by Mara Jade. There's the turn meter manipulation aspect of Pelp Lead. There's a potential here that Raddus could also stand up to Star Killer squads. I suspect, though, that might be more on paper and theoretical, kind of like how Fifth Brother only theoretically counters Shock T and Gas squads. But it is definitely something to be testing after this character goes active in the game, and what I'll be looking for in Arnold's videos. With this Grand Arena Omicron, I'm taking a wait and see approach. I think it's going to be a very good one. I think it will be at that dash tier where it takes a good squad, makes it better, but it's not mandatory. And I think we need to do some testing and see some results before we have an understanding of how important it's going to be. Because with Iden and her Omicron and that stacking offense, it might be the case that this Omicron is going to be mandatory for that 40% max protection to add the survivability for Raddus to take on the Iden teams. Or it might be a scenario where if it's Relic Idens and above, then you need the Omicron in order to survive, and a Gear 12 and below Iden squad, the Omicron is not mandatory. Also, there might be an aspect of needing to know what Raddus's base speed is. Maybe by the time this video is posted, the update will be added to the game and we'll know Raddus's base speed. But right now we don't, and if he's a slower character, having the Spark of Rebellion applied right away might be important to have that speed boost. Or maybe he's going to be fast enough and having Spark of Rebellion right away is not going to be a make or break element. The unique ability, Transmission from Scarif. Admiral Raddus is going to gain 30% defense and tenacity. If Jin Urso is an ally, she gains Spark of Rebellion at the start. When Jin loses Spark of the Rebellion, she gains Spark of the Rebellion. And while Admiral Raddus is alive, Jin can't be defeated. I think most of that is going to be the Zeta right there. And the other aspect of the kit is if Admiral Raddus is the leader, he gains the granted ability Hope. Admiral Raddus will be gaining 1% upload progress for each detrimental effect resisted by a Rogue One ally, and whenever a Rogue One ally deals damage to an enemy with Expose, Admiral Raddus gains 1% upload progress for each stack of Expose on that enemy, and whenever a Rogue One ally uses a special ability, Admiral Raddus gains 5% upload progress. 100% progress is when Admiral Raddus gains that bonus turn and gets Hope. Hope, the granted ability, 1 use per battle at 100% upload progress, revive all allies, and all allies recover 100% health and protection, AoE, true damage, inflict, protection disruption, and healing immunity. The Jin aspect of this kit is that's one other reason why the Grand Arena Omicron is less critical to me, because she at least is going to have Spark of the Rebellion, which means she'll have that 30 speed boost, and she will be able to use her first special to grant 100% turn meter to someone and allow them to take a turn right away. Probably I think Cassian's to inflict the debuffs because with her AoE on that first special, that might trigger all the exposes and mean there are no debuffs left over for Raddus to use his special in order to do that cooldown manipulation. But again, this is why I think we need to see the speeds on these characters and get some of that turn meter figured out. Now, the second aspect here with the upload mechanics and how that works, the important part here is if you're hitting that expose, it is going to be adding upload. Now, again, this is where that Iden-Verso synergy comes in with how vulnerable works, where you may not want to cleanse vulnerable because cleansing vulnerable is going to make the unique work less well on Raddus. Vulnerable is going to allow more exposes to be on the field, which is all going to be feeding into the upload gain and allowing you to use hope more quickly. So all this feeds into making Raddus a strong Iden counter, and this is great news for all those Rogue One fans who've built out strong Rogue One squads that they have not been able to utilize in a long time, like my brother, who has Gear 12, I think, on every Rogue One character in all the Zetas. So maybe that, and along with Andor coming out at the end of the summer, maybe we can see a lot more utility for the Rogue One faction in the coming months. With the Rogue One faction, the synergies are a little bit more straightforward. It's a smaller faction. A number of the characters are not all that useful. There's limited synergies. Without Jin lead, a number of those synergies that do exist already are going to drop out. Akbar is the Raddus stand-in, obviously, and Jin, explicitly called out, is going to be part of the squad. Now, Cassian spreads a ton of debuffs. Those debuffs will help out Raddus, and K2SO has those direct connections with Cassian. That synergy there is going to make him better. But also we have to keep in mind that Andor is coming out at the end of the summer, which is going to be something that CG can be predictably designing around. They could either add an Omicron, they could do a small touch-up to increase synergies to make those characters better. That's something they can do without watching any episodes and without coordinating with Lucasfilm. But we do need to consider that maybe there is going to be some Lucasfilm coordination. Or there are other characters like Saw Gerrera who have not been added to the game yet. It's a big blind spot. I'm only going to accept a Forrest Whitaker Saw Gerrera, though. I do not want a animated Bad Batch Clone Wars Saw. Not interested. Give me Forrest Whitaker. That maybe he's a surprise character in Andor. I would be happy about that. Chirrut, last one here. It's because the tenacity up. You're going to want to be careful because the unique on Raddus, you're not going to want to cleanse vulnerable, just like you're not going to want to cleanse debuffs with the third special on Raddus as well. But the tenacity up is going to allow them to resist more debuffs, which will allow the faction to get more upload. So Chirrut will have some benefit there. I think Baze possibly falls out. The dispel of the debuffs that Baze offers can be addressed by Raddus. And then the other characters have always been a little bit weaker and have never had as large of a use in the squad aspects. The Biston and Scarif Rebel Pathfinder you're going to want for the ship. And that's something that we can wait on for when the Profundity gets released. Now, in terms of the rest of the developer insights, this is what I'm always looking for, is clues for what's to come, and they're pretty explicit here. The basic, that just is a very reductive mechanics of what's going on with the kit and the character. Unique attributes gets a little bit more into the kit. We've already gone through those aspects, so I'm not going to rehash it. The inspiration, though, this section here, this is all basically saying Profundity, Rendar, and the Outrider. Everything is going back into X-Wing squadrons and Profundity as a capital ship. They tie it into Raddus himself as a character, as context for how they're thinking about Raddus and his kit. But this is just another domino towards that next capital ship. As we go into these strategy tips, they specifically call out Iden. That was fairly clear. But again, it's not just Iden. There are the elements that are going to have Palpatine and Starkiller counter capabilities here that can be exploited. I'm not convinced that it's going to work, but it's definitely something to be testing. And the last portions here, they talk about the upload mechanic and Rogue One as a tag. I have no issue with Raddus having a Rogue One tag. He's in the movie. It's fine. But they did the same thing with Book of Boba Fett with the Mandalorian tag, and why Boba Fett doesn't have the Mandalorian tag, whatever. And now to wrap up, as we do the free-to-play gearing of my roster, this is the gearing done on May 23rd, right around 2 weeks ago. And this also includes the sortie disaster that I have alluded to in my Grand Arena videos, where I had a bunch of crystals. I was using the BlueStacks built-in auto clicker, and somehow it shifted from buying Bronzium packs into buying sortie packs, and now I have a 5-star sortie and I don't have 20,000 crystals. So thanks to Jawas in the machine, again, something else to blame them for. But here is the gearing. I have the vast bulk of worthy characters at gear 11. I'm in nice luxury territory. I was about to do Rebel pilots. That's going to be Rebel pilots and Rogue One characters now. Not in this video, but they are next up. The project here was really to start adding a bunch of higher quality relics to my squad to get better counters working. I do it incrementally just to see which thresholds these things start at. Relic 5 Fennec, much better, but isn't going to really work with some of those specific counters. Starkiller I bring up to R6, much better, but he's definitely going higher. Some of those relic count, the GL counters aren't really there yet. But Wampa R6. Used him for JMK cleanup, used for Sith Eternal cleanup. Those portions are starting to work there. Some of the other GLs, I don't know if they're possible, but it wasn't really working when they came up. But the at least with JMK and Sith Eternal Emperor, R6 starting to happen. Now T3M4, that's because you need to have some of the Gear 12 pieces in order to get the defense penetration Zeta to work, and that is again to take advantage of the fact of I have sortie and I want to be using that character. The other thing I'm starting to work on, and this is why Mando is here, is I have a number of Gear 11 characters that just aren't good at Gear 11. They just die way too quick. Mando is one of those characters where, if you've noticed, I've tried to use Mando as a counter a lot, and more often than not, he dies. So having Gear 12 is going to make him still not good enough, but it is better. There's a number of other characters like that, like BB-8, for instance. Fifth Brother here, bringing up to Gear 11. Just needed that one Cairo. It's the only Inquisitor I do in this video, but I'm moving along and getting that faction to that Gear 11 threshold to get myself set up for the Grand Inquisitor. Now this video is from a couple hours later. You can see in the corner sortie has some green there. This is me just promoting my new sortie, which it's not the worst thing because sortie's a good character. And I already have a good droid, so it's a character I can use right away. And now the farm on Sortie is going to be a lot faster, so I'll be able to recoup some crystals. Obviously, it's not going to make up for it, but it's something I can test and use right away. It is something where here is my droid squad. You can see that I already have T3 and 4, I've got IG-88, I've got Probe Droid. I have everyone at least at gear 11. Like, IG-86 is the only droid that I don't have at gear 11, and I've looked up the gear that he needs. He's pretty cheap. And since we already have everything pulled up, let's take a look at the Rogue One faction. You can see where they stand today before the release of Raddus. Jyn is already favorited because she was next one up, but I'll be adding Baze, Chirrut, and Bodhi to that list as well to get them to that gear 11 staging ground I like to bring characters to. The rest of the characters were already there. K2SO is the most recent of those, but it's because they were pilots who were worth gearing up anyway, and Pow because he's great with a Mon Mothma squad. We will wrap it up there. I'm going to put a quarterly speculation video in the corner. Actually, let's do 2 quarterly speculation videos. If you want to look back at the predictions I've made in the past. And the next one of those is actually due at the end of the month, start of July anyway. And so I will be putting a couple wins in there. In the meantime, I do need to put out a video on the single shard farms, give my recommendations on which ones I don't think are worth waiting for being accelerated. A lot of these characters are pretty good and you're going to want to take advantage of sooner than later. And also, we are very close to 1,000 subscribers. If you've not requested a roster review and you are subscribed to the channel, head over to the Discord channel. That is closing at 1,000 subs. And after that, it will only be donation based or Patreon based. But thank you for watching, and thank you for all the support over the 2 years that I have been working and building and growing the channel and the community over at Discord. Thank you for all of the support. Be safe out there, everyone. Be excellent to each other. This is Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes.